Hi, everyone. Welcome again to Friday Leadership Live, Elevate.Strategy. Glad you can join us. Hopefully, if you're live here online, you'll drop in the comment below whereabouts you're from. Once again, thank you so much today. I'm in Toronto, Canada, where I'm from, and it's a beautiful day outside today, and a beautiful day to welcome my guest in today for Leadership Live Unplugged. So really looking forward to speaking with Karen today, and I'll introduce her in a second. So first of all, I wanted to remind you guys, so this series, Elevate.Strategy Leadership Live Unplugged, is really intended to tell people about other people's career journey stories. And it's been less about sort of the technical aspect of, what people do per se, as far as the technical aspect, but really learning about what people do and the why, how have they gotten to this point in their journey, why they made certain decisions in their career, etc. And, what is it that excites them about their role, right? And, if you've been watching before, I also asked a lot of questions around some difficulties and challenges that these leaders have faced before, and how is it that they overcome them. And so part of the reason for that is in my executive coaching practice, a lot of my clients are going through a lot of these difficulties even before COVID. So, it's always, they say misery loves company, but I don't really think that. I think it's support loves community, right? So if you hear other people's stories, then it might encourage you to do something similar or learn from them. So but anyway, you're again not here for me, you're here for my guest. So I'm going to introduce Karen. And again, if you're here live right now, just drop a comment below where you are. Just love to see where our reach is this week. And if it's post broadcast, feel free again, reach out to Karen. As I always say, I only invite guests that are nice people that really will respond. So because I'm a nice guy. So anyway, Karen Greenbaum. So Karen is president and CEO of the Association of Executive Search and Leadership Consultants. That's AESC, the global association representing the $16 billion profession worldwide. AESC serves as the voice of excellence for the executive search and leadership consulting profession globally, representing nearly 1,300 offices in 74 countries and beyond, to serve as strategic advisors on behalf of their clients. Karen herself is an experienced business leader, having served as the president and COO for the $1 billion US business of Mercer Consulting, MMC, a Fortune 200 company, and later as COO for Nixon Peabody, LLP, a nearly $500 million global 100 law firm. She also served as an executive search consultant and partner before being selected as president and CEO of the AESC. Karen is committed to diverse leadership, representing AESC as an official member of the 30% Club, a global group of chairs and CEOs committed to board diversity, and the Committee of 200, a global nonprofit focused on advancing women in business. And just a quick word from me about the AESC. I have always seen AESC as the mothership organization of search firms. So if you've ever been looking for a job, trying to apply for a certain, going to Korn Ferry or whatever it is, this association really is quite a large one that supports and also kind of rallies the best practices of these search firms. So it's kind of the mothership. So I'm really glad if you're here today, because Karen's got a lot of experience to share with us. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her to front screen here. Karen, thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited for this conversation.
Delighted to be here, Simeon.
Yeah, and you and I met through a part of AESC called Blue Steps, and I'd love for you to talk about that later on. But as always, I'd like to start out with, for those of you who don't know, you have never heard of the AESC, what is it that you do for a living right now, and what does it mean to be in that role that you are in?
So happy to do that. Actually, AESC isn't necessarily known well, but our members are known well. So we are the trade association for the executive search and leadership consulting profession. So that means that we have members who, firms that are members of AESC around the world. As you mentioned, in 74 countries around the world, we're truly global. And our members are large and global or small and regional. What they share in common is a commitment to quality, to professional standards, and to the core values that we hold dear, which, by the way, includes diversity. So we're very, very picky about who can be a member of AESC.
Right.
We're an exclusive association in that you have to really commit to the highest possible standards in order to be an AESC member. And the only other thing I'd say is the executive search profession is a really exciting profession. We basically play at the top of the house of businesses around the world, bringing in leaders and really making a difference. We strengthen leadership around the world, and we work with, public firms and private firms and family companies and academic and government and every kind of business you could possibly think of.
Right.
And leaders make a difference. So we have a big impact.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I think the key word for me there is just the breadth of the coverage of the members that are part of the AESC, right? And the commonality that they have around their values and the ethical elements that you talked about earlier. And we've talked about before that, it's really the best of the best. So it's not just the technical aspect of being able to offer the best roles or kind of have the represent the best clients on their part, but really being able to adhere to values that matter a lot to the profession of search and consulting in that regard. So what is one of the biggest challenges there? Because I've always wondered about the association, because you've got small to large firms and companies. What's one of your biggest challenges as far as kind of managing and kind of being the CEO of this large group of an entity?
Well, our biggest challenge over the last 2 years has been dealing with a very global organization virtually, because we haven't been able to, everything's been remote. So we've had to pivot to a digital world as quickly as our clients and our members have. So it's been an interesting challenge. But, I think we try to offer value to our members, and each member is looking for something different from a value perspective. So if you're a small firm in a smaller geography, you'll have a different need than if you're a global firm with a global footprint. But we really work hard to focus on our core similarities, our commitment to the profession, and as you say, ethics, integrity, and what really matters when it comes to talent.
Gotcha. And what are some of the common trends that you see right now? Well, we know a negative trend is COVID, but among sort of the talent pool, whatever it is, are there common threads around, your clients and kind of the marketplace right now?
Well, we've just finished a client survey with over 1,000 clients around the world, so C-suite and board executives. And what they told us in terms of competencies, it used to be all about agility, but now adaptability actually popped up to the highest level with agility number 2. And I think it's really interesting to think about that combination of adaptability and agility. So agility is in a way moving quickly. Adaptability is about change.
Right.
So it's that combination of being able to, and if you think about the last 2 years, adaptability, it's not just about moving quickly. That was really important.
Right.
But adaptability came out as having to try new things, having to do things in a different way. And so I think that helps inform our profession as we look at leaders. We look at leaders who can drive change, who can lead through difficult times, who can lead in a crisis. In the last 2 years, we've seen leaders emerge who have done an amazing job. We've also seen leaders who haven't been able to succeed in a time of change. They weren't able to pivot. And so, a big part of the role we play is assessing leaders for a role. Can they change? If a business has a new strategy, will the leader be able to help implement that? Change management is really important, but the adaptability, agility. But interestingly, another characteristic that comes up strong is emotional intelligence.
Okay.
The human side.
Right, for sure. And for those of you who are business owners, who are CEOs or C-suite people, or maybe people who are in transition, if you found that adaptability has been successful for you, I'd love to hear your comments around what you've been doing to become adaptable and agile as well. And one of the things that I see as an executive coach is really around retooling and reskilling and upscaling, uptooling, right? To stay on the ball as far as what the trends are, not just from technology perspective, but as you say, for example, the emotional intelligence aspect. How do we treat our employees? How do we treat our teams, et cetera, right? So you and I met through Blue Steps, and Blue Steps is an organization that actually is a very strong brand. I've come to know that. And the reason for that is because it is a referred brand by many, many large organizations and search firms and by a lot of business schools. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Blue Steps and what that is?
Yeah, so Blue Steps is an AESC business. So it is part of AESC. And if you think about AESC, so we are executive search consultants and we serve clients who are looking for candidates, right?
Right,
And so
right,
Blue Steps is a combination of a candidate database of top-notch executives, but it is also executive career services. And that's where you and I got to know each other or
right,
have gotten to know each other. So we like to think that we help candidates become better candidates. We help
right.
prepare them for the next move that they may be interested in. We make sure that the candidates are top notch. We like to align Blue Steps with our membership so that we want our members to know that when they're looking for candidates, they can look in Blue Steps and find great people, the kind of
Right.
people they're looking for. So whether that is people that can drive digital transformation or people that really have or diverse leaders who know how to build an inclusive culture, or whether it is someone that's uniquely expert in the whole environment of ESG and even sustainability.
Mm.
There's a lot of different skills that people are looking at, and a lot of different kinds of talent. I will say there is a shortage of top talent and has been.
Mhm.
And so when people are out looking for a job, they might think, well, why aren't I getting a call? And part of that is, have they built a professional brand? Yeah, but Blue Steps helps in that regard, helps people to really articulate their unique strengths. So that's how we've gotten to know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the really impressive elements of Blue Steps that I found are, so we have, a whole number of global coaches, right, that work with clients and members, individuals. And but those pool of coaches are incredible. They're top notch as well, and they come from a background from industry, HR, and consulting as well. And they really provide great guidance for the folks that you're talking about, the top talent that we're trying to groom them into, right? And that's been amazing. One thing that's also amazing to me about Blue Steps is that the individuals who come into the ecosystem of AESC are also incredible. Top talent is one of those things, as you're saying, is that lacking? Sometimes I do see it probably as missing the mark a little bit, but there's tremendous potential there, and that's what keeps me going, right? Is that you see the potential talent there, and as part of coaching, it's really trying to draw out that potential, right? So that they become top talent, and the members for ESC and others can see them and really want to snatch them up, right? So it's been a real joy being part of Blue Steps because of that, and the partnership that we have is incredible, and I really appreciate that opportunity. So okay, so that's Blue Steps. And oh, by the way, for those of you who are seeing this, visit www.bluesteps.com. That's where you'll find Blue Steps, and that's also where you'll find me sometimes. But www.bluesteps.com. I'm the director of the Executive Career Services, which really is the coaching element of Blue Steps. So yeah, come and visit, and definitely come and visit Karen on LinkedIn as well. I'll plug that again. She's a nice lady. I have no one but nice guests. No one but nice guests. Anyone who's mean doesn't get to talk to me. So,
Oh, well, I feel honored.
okay. So the next question that people are I'm very interested in knowing about is your journey. So your journey to get to where you are today, and why did you end up picking what you're doing today? And then maybe start further back if you'd like to say, what were your other options? And you going through college or however far back. Some people have gone back to when they're 4 years old, they watch their grandfather. It's
Yeah, I'm not
entirely
going to go that back far, but I am going to go back pretty far. And actually, Simeon and I didn't pre-rehearse this, and so he doesn't actually know my story. So
yeah,
I'll hopefully
yeah.
it'll be a little interesting. So I first of all, I went off to university to pursue my lifelong dream of being a kindergarten teacher.
Oh,
And after my freshman year of college, my college counselor called me in and said, there are too many people that want to be kindergarten teachers and you might not get a job. And I
right,
thought, I always wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. Now what? Now what am I going to do? Thank
right.
goodness that didn't work out. But I actually dropped out of school when I was 19, so I could find myself, and I got a job. And I got a job with a small company in Baltimore where I grew up, and that company was later acquired by Mercer, which is how I
Okay.
got to Mercer. So when I actually technically started with Mercer because of the acquisition, when I was 19 years old, and I began as a secretary without a college degree.
Really?
And over many years, I eventually became president of a $1 billion business. So it was an interesting career path, and certainly
Yeah.
not one that was expected. I went back to school at night and got a degree in business and marketing, and later went back and got my MBA from University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. But when I started, I was 19 and I was a secretary, and I was. I wasn't pursuing my lifelong dream as a secretary. I just got a job, and I was really excited to get a job.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so I was lucky to get that job. I was in the role for about a year, and then I was asked if I wanted to become a pension analyst, which is basically calculating, in the old days with a calculator, not a computer, calculating numbers all day long. And I took that job. Definitely not my dream job.
Right.
And then what happened is that the government passed a law requiring that companies communicate with their employees. And no one in the office knew how to do this. Was before we got acquired by Mercer. And someone said, Karen, would you like to start a communication business for us? And I said, what's that? And they said, well, we don't really know. I said,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's right.
It sounded perfect. I want to do a job that no one else has ever done, and no one knew what it was. So I would be starting something new.
And you'd be a superstar because no one actually knew what success looks like. Sure, I get that.
So in a way, that was the beginning of my career path of taking on jobs that were new.
Mm.
And so I began a communication practice. We got acquired by Mercer, who had a communication practice. I moved to Connecticut to be part of the national communication practice team, and eventually moved to Chicago. And so it was a path that I hadn't planned on in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't a secretary, and it wasn't a pension analyst. And it was just lucky that there was this crazy rule. Over time, I ended up eventually leading Mercer's communication and change management practice worldwide, and then moved back into regional management and managing the U.S. business. So quite a lot of different journeys. I would say the one thing that the similarity throughout it is that I never really had a set path, like here's where I want to be in 10 years. I never had that. I always, my success was always taking on new opportunities that I hadn't even known existed or hadn't existed. They were just new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And saying yes when I didn't quite know what it meant.
Right. I want to go back just briefly to the kindergarten comment that you made. Why was it that you had always wanted to do that? Like, what was the influence in your life that said,
Love kids. I had been babysitting since who knows how old, like 11, 12 years old. And I always liked kids. I still do. I have grandchildren now, and I still love kids, but I'm really glad I wasn't a kindergarten teacher. I
right.
have to say, when my kids were young and they were in that age, and I went, as a parent, and the kids were unruly, and I tried to, see if I could get them quiet. No. And then the teacher would like raise her hand and do something. And next thing you know, they're all quiet. And I thought, how did she do that? It doesn't work at home. So, but I've always loved kids. And so at that point in time, you have to remember that was a while ago. Women weren't in business. They weren't in executive roles. There were no role models. And so if you were a girl,
Right.
you would be thinking about, do I want to be a teacher, a nurse, a secretary? You didn't have role models. That's changed. It's not as, it's definitely changed. But at that time, I certainly didn't know any women in business.
Right. Gotcha. So you loved kids. Something that I've heard through when I was in consulting was, so managing people in consulting or in profession is kind of like managing kids, because they all have their own personalities, and it's kind of like you can't just raise your hand and they'll all stop, right? But so it's kind of like herding cats. So herding cats, like herding your children, is herding your staff. But anyway, so that's interesting. So you love children, and that's why you wanted to be. And so why did you drop out of college? You said to find yourself?
You know what? My parents didn't have a lot of money.
Okay.
And so I felt that if I didn't know when I went, I was going to be a teacher. So it was clear the path. But when I was told that teaching wasn't really the best option and I didn't know what else to do, I didn't feel like just getting a degree generally was was smart. I felt like my parents were spending too much money on my education, and that I needed to focus. I needed to know what I was going to do.
Right. Right.
And so I dropped out. And that was why. I just didn't, the thought of, well, just get a general degree, or, I
Hmm.
didn't, it was more, well, if I'm not going to be a teacher, what am I going to do? I
Right.
actually looked at getting a job in medicine, an X-ray technician, and I passed out in the interview when there was someone, they brought in someone bleeding, and I'm like, and I thought, medicine's out. That's out. That wasn't it. And so, yeah, that's what happened. I dropped out. And then when I got my job, then I thought, well, now I have a job. I'll go back to school and I'll go at night. And actually, going at night was really, it's a really strong, positive experience, because people at school at night were there
Hmm.
because they wanted to be, not because their parents were paying for their school.
Right.
These were people that
Right.
were working all day and going to school at night, and they really were committed and really wanted to be there. So,
Hmm.
so actually, it was a really positive experience for me.
Gotcha. So, in getting your first role and not having role models ahead of you to look at you, you're a bit of a pioneer that way. So, what was it that kept you going? So, what was it that said, you know what, there isn't anyone out there that I can see as an example, but I'm still going to keep going anyway. Like, what characteristic would you say of your personality really pushed you forward? Because I think in some ways today, there are no role models for certain people, let's say for minority groups. And that's one of the things about diversity is, so the discouragement might be there. So what would you say to someone who's trying to break through? Like, what kind of personality trait do they need to develop in order to do that?
Well, I think, while I wouldn't say I'm like a wildly risk person, I was never afraid to try something new. So in other words, I didn't have to have a set path. I wasn't afraid of trying something new. So I think that
Mm.
that openness to doing something new and not questioning myself. I never really said, well, I've never done that, so I probably can't. I think I was always intrigued with new things.
Hmm.
Um, I also, over time, realized that I like fixing things.
Okay.
Just in general, I like fixing things. And so when I started to reflect back on my successes, I realized that I was pretty good at going into a business that was struggling and turning it around.
Gotcha. So fixing things was, you probably wanted to fix children when you were a kindergarten teacher. So,
I don't
um,
know.
but you talked about risk, and not being a risk taker per se, right? If you were to look back now and say, a young Karen, and you would say, the risk that you took was a good one that you made, right? What kind of So what I'm looking for is this: when I spoke with you first, and I kind of got to know you, even now, there's a sense of a grit and there's a sense of perseverance that you want to get to the bottom of the question, and that's just how you lead, right? Is you like to fix things, but I think in my mind, so I'm putting words in your mouth now because this is what I observe, and I think I want my audience to see that is that when there's no role model per se, I think that persistence is very, very important, right? Did you encounter a lot of pushback when you were trying to, find your first job or try to even get to the pension level and then sort of get acquired by Mercer? Like, was that smooth sailing for you?
Well, the acquiring part was really smooth sailing, because the person who led the due diligence team became my husband. So that's
Okay.
how I met my husband of many, many years. So he used to joke that I was the best thing that came out of the deal, because he was brought down from New York to Baltimore to do the due diligence on the acquisition, and that's how we met. But I'll tell you a story about what happened at the time of acquisition that I think was a really pivotal point for me. Um, so the small company was being acquired by Mercer, and I was the only one that didn't have a college degree. I was one course short of my degree, by the way, 3 credits, and I could have taken a course in basket weaving and graduated. I just needed 3 more credits, and I was going to school at night. The owner of the business said, um, Mercer's too important. Not Mercer. The owner of the small business said, Mercer's too important. We can't elect someone as an officer in Mercer who doesn't have a college degree.
Hmm.
So all of my peers were named, assistant vice presidents, and I wasn't, because I didn't have a college degree, and I was one course short. I was really mad.
Hmm.
I was
Hmm.
really mad. I was so mad that I let the owner know. And as a reward for that, he wrote a note into my personnel file saying that I had a bad attitude. And he put me on probation at the
Oh,
time of the acquisition. So Mercer's coming in. They don't know me from anyone. All they know is that in my personnel file, it says I have a bad attitude
right.
and I'm on probation.
Oh, you're on probation. Okay.
Yeah. So I had to do some serious soul searching. What am I going to do about it? I'm either going to quit
Right.
or I have to do something about the attitude, even though I was super angry. I was, and I realized that attitude is something you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that I could come to work every day with a big smile on my face and pretend that I was happy, even though I was really not happy.
Yeah.
And so I
Sure.
either had to leave because I'm on probation and I have a bad attitude, or I have to visibly change my attitude.
Right. Right. Gotcha.
So it was a
Okay.
pivotal point. Like, what am I going to do? And I decided, you know what? Attitude is one thing I can control. I
Yeah.
can, it's completely in my control. So I was the
Yeah.
nicest, maybe to your point, I was so nice. Um, I came in with a good attitude, a can-do spirit.
Yeah.
I got my degree, I got promoted, everything worked out. Um, but it was really a powerful moment for me to understand the impact of attitude and the
Right.
fact that you can control that. And I realized that people don't want someone on their team who has a bad attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're in a place in your job that's not making you happy and you let it show, it's going to impact you.
Right.
So
Right.
even if you personally are feeling frustrated, how you present that can have an impact on how you're seen by others. Um,
Right.
and so to me, that's one of the most important learnings I had in my whole career,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of a positive attitude. And you were in consulting as I was. When you put together teams, you have choices of who you put on your team, right?
Right. Exactly. Yep.
And you're not going to pick the person who has a chip on their shoulder or
Yep.
who has a bad attitude. You're going to pick someone who's a hard worker, who's fun to work with, who you like working with. And that's how you succeed in consulting, right? By
Yeah.
the assignments that you get and the work that you do, but also the collaboration and the teamwork. And so it was a really
Definitely.
important lesson for me. And I think for the audience, the importance of attitude and your own personal ability to control that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see that a lot, especially with executives who are sort of they're treading water, right? And so there's two things: treading water and the attitude behind like entitlement. There's sometimes a sense that I get from my clients that they're entitled to something because they've had so many years of experience, they have this title behind their name, and so they're exactly like you said earlier. It's like, why is no one calling me? Like I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. And what people don't understand is that there are a lot of very qualified people out there who are equally capable of doing the job. And I always talk about value proposition, right? What is the value that you bring that's unique to you? But one of the things about value is also attitude. You need to have that element of impact, right? Is you're out to serve, right? You're not just out to get, but you're out to serve an organization or your boss or someone like that. And what have you got to offer to them that will help them, help make their lives better? Not in the sense of, kissing up, but just really trying to be a better person per se, right? Um, so on that note of attitude, I know we're kind of going into a bit of the struggle element of things. What's the hardest part for you of managing your attitude?
My
Um,
own personal,
yeah, I mean,
honestly, I feel like I got it all figured out a long time ago. So I don't view that as my challenge.
okay.
I do think I'm a good coach for others where I can say, here's something to do. To tell you the truth, I am a glass is way more than half full kind of person. I'm positive, I'm upbeat, I'm optimistic. I just wake up with a smile on my face. It's just how I am. And maybe it's a question of survival, but I am in general a positive person. And I
Gotcha.
try not to let negative things get me down, but rather think about maybe it gets back to problem solving, right? So when I had this problem, I could have either, I realized I had a choice. Actually, it was nice to know I had a choice, but one choice
Mhm.
was quit.
Yeah.
And I had to decide, well, did I, in the midst of this huge firm buying us, is this the time I want to quit? I didn't think so. I was actually excited about it. So I needed to
Right.
fix it. So I
Gotcha.
guess I would say that. I
So,
don't,
so then, so then for you, what is a challenge? So tell me about when you were kind of going through your career development and growth. I guess one question I always find interesting for the answer is what areas of weakness or development, whatever you want to call it, showed itself up in your life that you didn't expect. You never knew that, oh, this is the way that I react to certain things, and it's not very healthy, or it's difficult for my, like, is there anything that you surprised yourself that you needed to work on? You never knew
I
that
don't
you,
know if I would say surprise myself. I would say that I've had the same coaching tip given to me for many years, and I'm constantly focusing on it, and it's still something I have to constantly focus on. And that is the importance of listening and not always speaking first. And I
yeah.
think as a leader, sometimes you think, oh, I'm the leader, I should talk. And actually,
Hmm.
I learned that leaders are really good at listening. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
and sometimes I just get so excited, I just want to, you know, say what I'm thinking about. But I think control, you know, I think my biggest something I focus on a lot is
Right.
really trying to, stay calm, stay in the moment, listen, not multitask. I actually learned I'm not a good multitasker, even though I thought I was.
Right.
Not turn my phone over
Okay.
and stay present. Stay
Okay.
present in a conversation.
Right. And that's a great lesson for anybody to learn, especially for executives. That's the first time actually I've had any guests talking about that, turn the phone off as a distraction and as a way to, in some ways, also respect the conversation, right? And respect the person who's trying to show you something or to express something to you, which, to them is valuable, right? So you're
When we're very busy, a lot of times you're so busy, you think, I have to do this, but this and this and this and this. And what happens is the person that's in front of you feels like you're not there.
Mhm.
And so I think this whole idea of really listening, taking the time, listening, trying not to get distracted by everything going on in your head about everything else that's going on, and frankly, if you're at a moment where you just can't, then you have to apologize and say, you know what, I have to admit to you, I'm in the middle of a bit of a crisis right now. Could we reschedule this time?
Right.
Just be present. Really try to be present. So I think that's really important. Something else that happened at some point in my career, and it was like a turning point, but I can't pinpoint when it happened,
Mhm.
is that you're younger in your career and you're moving up and you're trying to make sure you're getting noticed, right? And you want to make sure that everyone, hey, see me, I'm a leader, promote me, see me. There's a point in time where you get there and you realize that what you should be doing is helping others,
Right.
um, sharing credit and sharing credit generously. That actually saying I did it doesn't buy you as much as saying, wow, I loved working with Simeon. He was great. And this one and this one. And sharing credit generously
Mhm.
actually helps you as a leader.
Right.
And I think that that's an important lesson to learn to, be a coach, be a mentor, share credit generously. Um, and it doesn't take away from your success. It actually enhances it.
Mhm. Do you think it was your attitude and that positive element of building others and learning about sort of listening before talking? Is that kind of what led to your success as far as going from a secretary to the president, CEO, and a large executive person?
It was probably more my incredible work ethic. And really, I mean, I was not a 9 to 5 person. Strong work ethics, strong commitment to results, strong
Yeah.
commitment to getting it done, but not on my own. Not, like I'm going to do it all by myself, but really people knew if you gave something to me, I would get it done.
Right.
And so I would say that when you succeed and get something done, you get asked to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely
And
for
you're
sure.
not afraid to take a chance. I moved to Chicago to run a business that they were thinking of closing down because it was doing so poorly. And I'd never managed anything. I was 28 years old, and they said, Karen, why don't you go out there and do it? I'm like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
You
I'd never
feel.
managed a person.
Yeah.
And I got out to Chicago, and actually the office was burned to the ground my second week of employment. It was arson. It was an
No. Literally.
Yeah, I had to work with the FBI, and oh my goodness. And I had never managed a person. And I got to the office and it was like, it looked like a bomb had been thrown in. Anyway, suffice to say, trial by fire.
Right,
I
sure.
really lived it. But we turned the office around, and it was
Mhm.
really fun. But I have to tell you that when it got turned around and it was working great, it was like, okay, is there anything else broken that I can fix? So that was sort of the beginning of that kind of process. But no, I think it was really focused on results, not just
Right,
having a good attitude, but focusing on results.
right. So let's assume that an executive, someone that we're coaching, is hardworking, right? And just some things are not really going their way for whatever reason it is, right? Um, what would you say to them is important for them to learn and to kind of acquire in this day and age of this kind of particular market, right? I know we talked about the fact that to be adaptable, to be agile, to be all these things, but there are some folks clients that I coach that are quite nearly in tears when I'm talking to them, and for them it's a bit of a loss not knowing where to go. Like what should I, maybe it's they need to retool. They know that, but they also know that there's a part of them that feels defeated, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to them as far as like how could they start to kind of generate that motor to get back on their feet again, to work hard, to have a positive attitude? What would do you have any tips for that?
That's a hard one because I think that, my attitude story, I was miserable, but I didn't let it show. And then after a while, all of a sudden, I realized I wasn't feeling miserable anymore. So someone was like, I eventually convinced myself. So first of all, if you're in the depths of despair, you somehow have to get out of it because it will
Hmm.
show
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it won't help you. And so you either have to get out of that through, personal friendships or whatever. I also can say that, there's a lot of talk about mentoring. One thing I can say is I tried to learn from everyone, and maybe some of my best lessons were from my worst bosses,
Okay.
because you learn about what to do and what not to do.
Right.
But the other thing I think is sometimes people feel like their boss should have ESP. Like, my boss doesn't recognize me for this or doesn't know this. And I thought, well, how are they supposed to know? They have a lot of other things on their mind. It's speak up,
Hmm. Hmm.
speak up and be heard. And if you're going to sit in the back, I said, I'm not a back row person. When you go to your MBA class and you choose your seats, some people sit in the last row at the top.
Yeah.
I never sat in the last row. I'm not a back row person.
Yeah. I'm not
If
surprised.
if you want to be seen and heard, you have to speak up. And so I
Right.
think sometimes take control of the situation in a way, not in a negative way, not in a confrontational way, but take a step back, maybe get a coach to help you. Take a step back and think about how do you back up a few steps and restart.
Hmm.
You have to get out of it. So, I mean, I've coached some people to say, look, if you're that unhappy, you should leave. You,
Hmm.
you have to get out of a situation. You either have to figure out how to get out of it where you are or go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Although I will say if you're interviewing when you're feeling down, it will show.
Right. Right.
You won't get the job because
Yeah.
it'll show.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's the worst experience in the world for both parties is when you're in an interview and halfway through it, you realize that this is just not working. Like the walls are crying, right? It's the most worst terrible. I would say another thing, Karen, probably that you don't mention, maybe out of humility, is that you're extremely resourceful. We're going through some decision making right now between you and I for some of the parts of Blue Steps, and I would encourage the audience to think about being resourceful because you tap into places where people have sort of dismissed already, and that's something that is a remarkable characteristic where there might be something that I've sort of said, you know what, this is useless now, right? But you're looking for use all the time in every area, and I think that's part of the positive attitude, but it's also understanding that there's an interconnection between everything, right? There's someone's weakness might be someone else's strength, and vice versa. So I always encourage clients to be resourceful, right? In the midst of not knowing what to do, find something to do, right? And I mean, getting up, you can't steer a ship that's not moving, right? It's, as the saying goes. So you start doing something, then you'll feel that way as well. So that's
Sometimes
really
it's taking a fresh look. You and I have been working on some challenges, and I said, you know what, maybe we just need to rethink the whole thing. Let's start with a blank piece of paper. Sometimes you just have to say, instead of changing something, like put it aside and look at a blank piece of paper and say, if we're starting fresh today, maybe we would do it completely differently. Let's take a fresh look. Because sometimes I think you get so stuck in trying to fix things that you don't take that, maybe it just needs a completely different approach.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. When you are managing this large organization now, AESC, and there's a lot of strong personalities. I'm pretty sure about that, right? What are some tips around sort of, and I know this is off script now, but this is sort of picking on your wisdom as far as what I hear from my clients about managing upwards or managing sideways or managing delicately politically, right? In this climate where a lot of roles are found through networking, do you have any thoughts around like how do you what's the delicate balance as far as, is it a combination of developing some emotional intelligence? Is it a combination of emotional quotient? Like, how do you manage this? It's a large organization and it's got so many firms, so many different personalities. Like, what's your secret sauce?
Well, part of it is surrounding myself with a great team.
Okay.
Because I could never do my job on my own. So surrounding myself with a great team of people who I can completely rely on and depend on. So that's really important. And we have a great team. Another is, it goes back to listening. So sometimes making sure that you're really listening, that you're asking people questions. I learned in consulting, when you're doing a pitch, the best sales technique is asking questions. The best sales technique is not telling people stuff.
Right.
Let me tell you all about stuff.
Yeah.
You ask really good questions for an hour with a client, they walk away and say, wow, that person was really smart.
Yeah.
So, it's not about, decks and telling people things. It's about doing your homework and asking good questions.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think leading an organization like AESC takes a lot of vision too. You have to have sort of a futuristic view of like, what are we going to be like in 2 years or 1 year? And, how do we become that better organization? Right. So yeah, surrounding yourself with a team is really, really important point for any environment, right? Whether you're in battle, whether you're in business, whether you're, even in your family, trying to navigate through work-life balance, right? The team is your family. And we've talked about this in different interviews as well, like the support for a lot of these successful people that, have gotten through up and down. There's a common theme around family. There's a common theme around having, friends that are outside of their circle of work. There's a common theme around sort of having mentors. And, there's a reason for that. But part of what I've said before is 2 weeks ago, I think I was interviewed by a radio station and they were asking about the Great Resignation, right? And well, I thought about that. And my view has always been that it's not so much the resignation as it is about a reset. There's a reset of thinking where, I said before that work-life balance doesn't work when there's such a strong emphasis on the dollar sign. When you're sitting at work, there's an emphasis on the dollar sign. Like the walls are nice, your chair is nice, desk is like, how in the world can you balance out of that, right? And I think what COVID has done is allow people to kind of sit in their shoddy old chairs, kind of at the kitchen table, and kind of.
I got a new chair during COVID, by the way.
Oh, you did? Okay, so you're an exception. You wanted to have that dollar sign come in, but my point is, it seems like there's been a reset of dollar signs to value about your purpose in life, and so now there is a chance now for a bit of decision making around like, there's equal footing on both ends.
I'm not even sure I'd call it a reset of dollar signs. I might disagree with you on that, but I think maybe it's a focus on what's important to you.
Okay. Yeah.
And during COVID, particularly where maybe people lost their jobs, they were put on leave or whatever, and then they found other things to do, or maybe
sure,
or maybe whatever, something happened at work where they said during COVID, things are changing. And I have an opportunity to think about, is this what I want?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know that I would call it dollar signs. I would really say it's a time of reflection. And people had a chance to say, is this, when I see how precious life is, is this what I want?
Yeah, absolutely.
I renewed my contract during COVID, so I guess I decided it was.
Okay, you renewed your contract with AESC or with
With
okay,
AESC, yeah. So
okay,
I'm
gotcha,
going to stay for a while. So
gotcha,
yeah, I mean, I do think people reflected on what's important.
right,
And it's not really about dollar. I wouldn't say it's about values and what's important. And maybe it's
yeah,
balance. Are you people, some people left the cities they were in and they went elsewhere. And then they said, I sort of like that. Some people hated remote, but some people love remote and they don't want to go back to
yeah,
a brick and mortar environment. So I think it affected everybody differently.
hmm
But
hmm
it was a reckoning of what do I really want?
right, yeah, yeah. Well, what I meant to say was that there's a movement sort of away from the focus on dollars and more about what you said about focus. Like, what is it that brings tremendous value to you in your life? That's maybe a more holistic approach, right? I find that a lot of language that I end up using in my coaching practice is around legacy, and and sort of using more sort of, for fear of being too philosophical, it's really the idea of what do you want to be on your tombstone or your epitaph, right? Like you can't take certain things with you in your legacy, but you can leave behind certain things. So a lot of that reflection, like you're saying, is the focus usually leads to something that's external. It's an impact that you have on something else, leaving something better, leaving something faster, leaving something more innovative, whatever it is. um, and so yeah, I think those are really great points about the focus element of things. um, so if you were to kind of have a crystal ball now and say, okay, when we get out of this, whatever crisis we're in, whatever it is, the crystal ball would say that here are the top three things that you need to have. So I know attitude has been one of your positive things, but as far as, you could say technical skills, you could say personality kind of traits, you could say attitude, whatever it is, what would you say, like three things that people need to kind of work on, or at least kind of have a better grasp of being successful in the new world coming forward?
Yeah, those are really good questions because I think everybody's different, right? And so if I say I know adaptability is important, but you may not be an adaptable person, so
Mhm.
I can't just say, well, then so go off and be adaptable. I mean, I think it is different. I guess I would say, uh, attitude and listening are really important. Um, I do think trying to get in a place where you feel like you're doing something you love and it can have an impact. And by the way, I mean, work is still work, right?
Yeah.
I've always said that getting the balance right between outside of work and inside work is really important, because what I've found as a manager is that when the balance gets off, bad things happen.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if something bad is happening at work, but family life is going well, you can get through it. If
Yep.
something bad is happening with family, but work's going well, you can get through it. But when bad things are happening on both sides of the equation, it can just drown you.
Right.
And so try to figure out how to get something really going well on one or the other side so that you can then fix the other side. Because if it's both sides not going well, it's really hard to get out from under. So, take a look at your whole life. Don't look at things in compartments. Take a look at your whole life to see what do you have to change to get in a better place if you feel like you're not in a good place. If
Hmm.
you're in a good place and you just want to grow and develop, um, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to say, how about me?
Yeah. Right.
Volunteer, ask. If you're in an organization that you want to stay in, but you want to be recognized for the next role, let someone know. Maybe
Right.
they don't know you're interested in the next role. Or if
Right.
you want to make a change, let's say you're in an organization that you love, but you really feel like you've about had it with your current, like you just don't feel challenged in your current role. Um, Ask for a 15-minute coffee with someone, or a virtual coffee these days, and get yourself known by different people.
Hmm.
And don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I had a boss once say to me that, if you don't ask, you don't get. So there's two things about being who I am that kind of pull me back from asking. Number one is I'm Canadian. And so Canadians tend to be a little bit nicer and softer and whatever it is. Like I'm just generalizing for myself now, not playing identity politics, but this is me. Canadians are kind of like that. The second thing is I'm Chinese. So Asians tend to be a little bit quieter as well. So, but I was just told that, if you don't ask, you don't get. This is the general rule of life, right? It's just like if you don't go ask for an ice cream, you're not going to get it. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And in this situation today, where you ask may not be where you used to ask, right?
Well, and it's also how you ask. It's not like you go pounding on the door. It's, I'll tell you a story. One of the tips that someone told me, if you're looking for a board role, make sure people know. Because everyone is a network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you don't say, by the way, I'd really like to get on a board, to everyone one of those people could be exactly someone who's going to open up a door for you. So when I say ask, I mean, let it be known.
Yeah. Make yourself available. Yeah.
And also, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. I'm thinking about, I'd really like a change in this organization or doing something different. What do you think I should focus on to help me get to that step? Don't be afraid to ask, because no one's perfect. And if you act like you don't have anything to learn, then you're obviously wrong.
Right. Gotcha. Well, we're getting to the top of the hour, so I'm going to probably start wrapping up our official kind of serious conversation. I just have a few rapid fire questions for you.
All righty.
That I always ask. And if you've never seen any of my interviews before, which is fine, you won't know what they are. So rapid fire question 1. So what is your alter ego profession? Is it still kindergarten teacher?
No.
What would you rather be doing right now? I mean, not rather, but what would you do if you weren't doing what you were doing?
Definitely not kindergarten teacher. I have to say, I don't have a, gee, I wish I could do something else kind of role. I'm having fun right now.
Wow. Okay.
And so I don't have this is the thing I'd really do instead. It's not kindergarten teacher for sure. But I'm sorry to be boring, but I don't have what's yours?
I've always wanted to be a police officer, believe it or not. And, but I don't, and I can't now at this point. Well, I never say you can't, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't want to be a police officer either.
No one's ever asked me that question back here. And that's
turn it around to see how it feels,
That's not fair.
So give me another question, but no, I don't
well,
have.
I know. No, I got it. I would want to be a UFC fighter, MMA fighter, because I'm heavily into martial arts. I love martial arts. As quiet and demure as you can see possible that I am, I'm not. So I'm heavily into kickboxing, and if I had the build, if I had the DNA, I'd go and become a fighter. And I don't know if my wife would support me, but okay. What's one word that you love?
That's easy. My kids will tell you if you ask my children what's the one word mom talks about the most, it's integrity. I love it. I think it's important. I taught my kids since they were little about the importance of integrity. I think it's really core to it. Favorite word, integrity.
What does that mean to you? What does integrity mean to you?
I think it means authenticity. Okay. I think it means being trusted.
Okay.
I think it means holding yourself to a high standard even when it's tough.
Okay, right. And what's one word that you hate?
Negativity. I don't like to be negative, and I don't like to be around negative people.
Okay.
So
what happens when you're around negative people, Karen?
I try to cheer them up, or I walk away, because I don't want them to bring me down. Seriously, I just don't. I can suck you. It just it sucks. Yeah, I don't like it.
There's energy givers and energy takers. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way of putting it, because when I talk about positivity, I don't want it to seem like something silly. It means really giving off positive energy versus taking away positive energy, taking away the energy.
What's one book or movie title that would best describe you?
Oh, I did watch one of yours, and you didn't ask that question.
You didn't watch one of them? Okay, all right.
I didn't see that one in there. Movie title or book that I have all these books behind me.
Don't worry. If you asked me right now, I couldn't think of one either.
I'm laughing because I was just looking at, classic books, and one was The Divine Comedy. I thought, well, that's sort of fun.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
I
And
just,
the last,
only because it's a book on my shelf, and I didn't want to pick War and Peace. That was just not, definitely not. Or Unconscious Bias is another book. I didn't want to pick that one.
got it. Okay. Last one. What's one COVID hobby or habit that you've developed?
Yeah, I did a couple of things that were, first of all, I was at home for 2 years, and I've traveled every week for years and years and years and years. So one hobby is like spending time with my husband, which is a funny hobby to mention, but we're so used to just being together on the weekends that, now we're together all the time and actually still having fun. So I would say spending time with my husband. I actually did learn how to bake bread, which was
Okay.
sort of fun, but I don't bake bread a lot, but it was actually sort of fun to like put something there and bake it, and out comes bread. So,
Right.
but probably it's not really a hobby, but the thing that brings me the greatest joy are my 2 grandchildren.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember one of the first meetings you had your grandchild with you, and you said, "Don't worry, I don't always have a child tied to my hip." So I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Karen, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you and working alongside you. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to put you backstage, and then we'll wrap up, and I'll say hi again.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Well, that was, as usual, a very, very amazing interview. I'm going to timestamp this. This was a very great conversation. A lot of questions that I don't think Karen expected. I didn't expect that either. It's just an organic conversation, right? So post-broadcast, I know a lot of you guys watch and reach out. Thank you for that. But do reach out to Karen as well, and just ask her about her story. And as she's advised you and me, is ask the questions and listen, and be curious and try new things. So anyway, until next week, which we have another really wonderful guest, have a great weekend, and I'll see you real soon. All right.